We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
It seems government agencies have been running amok, much as Donald Trump suggested during his now successful campaign. What does this mean for the bureaucratic state going forward under a Donald Trump presidency, a second Donald Trump presidency? We're very fortunate to have with us Liberty Nation's national security correspondent and a man who understands the machinations in and out greater than any Sir Humphrey that may be appointed, Mr. Dave Patterson. Thanks for being here, Dave.
Thank you, Mark. Happy to be with you.
So, Dave, this has been in the week since Donald Trump won the election. It seems that jitters are forming inside the Beltway. What's your take on the situation?
Well, I think they are, because all the decisions are being made down in Mar-a-Lago. And, they're, the standard pundits are not being asked about their opinion, and because they've been so successful in the past.
One of the greatest predictors of future actions is prior actions, which was what always struck me as funny when the legacy media in the run-up to the election were talking about Donald Trump's going to be a dictator, and he's going to do this and he's going to do that. And I speak to people who, I speak to everybody across the aisle, everywhere, whichever side of the aisle. And when they say Donald Trump, he's going to do all these, he's going to be a dictator, he's going to do all these things. And I said, what gives you that idea? And he says, well, it's obvious that he's going to do it. And I said, did he do it in the past? And they say, no, but that doesn't mean he won't do it in the future. And I think, well, and then I asked the question, what's the greatest indicator of future actions? And they say, they say nothing, to be honest. They start going off on a tangent to it. But yeah, the past is the best predictor of the future. So there's all these jitters taking place because people aren't, as you say, they aren't getting their opinion asked for, which they're used to doing even, and let's be very clear on this, during the first Trump administration, these people were consulted and many of them were put into positions. And it seems that that's not happening this time around.
No, that's true. And the reason is because I think that President Trump learned a valuable lesson. And that is that what people say is not always what they do. And no matter how much they try to ingratiate themselves and explain how valuable they are, the truth is that very few of them are really valuable. Valuable to a point where they're better than everyone else. Mm. And I think that Trump realized that, and he put in people that he was that he gravitated toward emotionally, like, for example, General Mattis. That's a good example. And when General Mattis was chosen, I thought that was a good thing. And because he was very organized, he was one of the best battlefield commanders that we had. He did a terrific job. But what we ended up with was a CENTCOM on the Potomac. Mm. He brought with him everything that he knew. And that just did not really work in terms of the politics and how Washington works. So it was not a good fit after all. But I think that President Trump has realized that these kinds of things are true and is going about things entirely differently and is going at them much faster. I believe that this whole chessboard was set up quite a long time ago, and that now it's just looking at the things and refining the decisions.
Moving into the end game. I think it's pretty... So it seems to me that what we have now is there's a number of federal agencies and organizations that are expanding on the jitters thing, quite rightly worrying about what's going to happen to their organizational structures. And I think a case in point is the recent discovery, I believe it was Daily Wire that broke the story first, about a FEMA team leader who... Now, let's set the background on this. This is quite something interesting. During the campaign, Donald Trump made arguments for two things. He said, one, that FEMA was spending millions of dollars on illegal immigrant programs. And number two, he said that FEMA was not providing services to people in Republican areas. Now, he was lambasted through the press as a conspiracy theorist, and I believe the FEMA director went on the news and said, when he spreads this kind of misinformation, it causes us danger. Anyway, it turns out just a couple of weeks down the line that, of course, FEMA money was being spent on illegal immigrant programs, and that too, yes, Republicans were being actively avoided by FEMA. And this came out, there was an employee, she's now an ex-employee apparently, but she felt confident enough to put out on her organizational memos and to enter into the governmental systems to, and this is not quite an exact quote, but it's avoid homes with Trump-Vance paraphernalia. And the people in her team were confident enough that this would not be an issue, that they entered that as a reason for not going to a particular house on the government database. Now, the FEMA director, is the director, she said that this person has now been dealt with and this does not represent our values. My question, Dave, is why did the people, the lady who's been fired, Marnie Washington, and the people within her team feel confident enough that this was not a gross violation of duty, that they're even confident enough to put it into a government system to enter it? It had a Trump-Vance flag on the system.
That's pretty simple. I mean, it's cultural. That is their culture. They are anti-conservative. They're anti-Republican. They're chosen for that. It is part of their very nature, so that when you fortify that notion in their mind, it's perfectly obvious. Of course, we would do that. Why wouldn't we? Because they're the enemy. And what it does is it absolutely underpins this notion that within the bureaucracy, there is this community that is anti-Trump, and they will do whatever is necessary to ensure that Trump and his administration is not successful. It is what they live for. He calls it the deep state, and actually Hamilton called it the deep state. But it is. This is an undercurrent of people who are diametrically opposed to the will of the people of the United States, and they are perfectly happy to do everything they can to succeed because it's part of their culture.
I think it's fascinating that you use the word culture there, because if something is culturally inherent within a system or within an organization, then who is ultimately responsible? Well, that's the leadership of that organization, right? Because they inculcate the culture from the top down. And so, although the individual in question, the one who put out these orders, both in writing and verbally, to avoid houses with Trump-Vance paraphernalia, although she has been fired, it does nothing to address the fact that this was allowed to fester and foster within an organization that, let's be very, very clear, FEMA saves lives, right? And if they're picking and choosing winners or people that they'll deal with here, that could lead to a loss of life for people based on their politically charged culture. And so I'm wondering how many heads of these agencies will be given their walking papers once Donald Trump is inaugurated.
Well, I think to your point about saving lives, it's absolutely true. But I also see this as, more ubiquitously, they are supposed to reduce misery, because in catastrophes, people are in misery, and that's their job, to come in to do things that will decrease and reduce the misery of the people. And when you pick and choose who you're going to allow to be miserable and who you're not, then I think there's a serious, serious problem. It's a despicable attitude and a despicable behavior. But it is not surprising because when you think about it, the rhetoric that was used against Trump, perfectly consistent with what FEMA's behavior was. But it's not just going to be this one supervisor who is going to be fired now, of course, because now you can sweep the place clean of all of these reprobates that have chosen politics over the public.
And that is something we'll continue discussing after this short break. Don't go anywhere.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.